In this video, I want to talk about growing amaryllis. Specifically, I want to talk about growing it outdoors in zone 8, maybe 7B. I'm in zone 8A, technically on the line of zone 7B, 8A, but climate for a while now has been kind of shifting, and I've noticed like this is changing. Back in the 90s, this was purely like zone 7B weather, but now I consider it zone 8A, and it technically is zone 8A, but it is right on that line. Here in this winter, we are getting very, very cold weather that's been one of the colder winters we've had in a lot of years, actually. Sorry, the light's kind of in my eye. I have 10 amaryllis here, and I want to talk about if you are in zone 8 and you want to grow these outdoors and have them blooming outside in the spring, what should you do? Or just to basically kind of briefly outline what it is that I'm doing this year. Before this year, I grew them, I just kind of had them forced indoors. Now, most, if not all, amaryllis you get are made for forcing. They're grown in artificial environments, and they're plumped up, and they're meant to bloom indoors over winter. But the amaryllis that you can find here and there, some locally, some on Etsy, places like that, those I guess would be considered heirlooms that people have been growing outside regularly. Here, actually, where I live in upstate South Carolina, I don't know how many people, I'm not really involved in our community here to know like how many people who are growing out amaryllis are doing that outdoors. I just know I want to have them outdoors blooming in the spring. I spoke with someone on YouTube a few months ago in zone 8 in Texas. I think she was in Texas, who has been growing hers outdoors for a few years, and she talked about her experiences with that, but it was a little bit vague for me. Now, the reason that this is so frustrating for me on YouTube is that you really, even for people who are in zone 9 or 10, there's just no videos on people who actually plant them outdoors. There's not any even simple video of someone planting an amaryllis outdoors. It's very, very strange to me. So if you are on that line, like perhaps even as low as zone 7A, and you want to give it a try, yeah, this video is definitely for you. Amaryllis are a lot more cold hardy than I think people are aware, actually. If you look up online, it might say they can't. I looked it up today, and it said that they can't tolerate below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is completely false, like completely false. I wish that would change. I don't know why it says that. I would say, generally speaking, amaryllis, you don't want it to go below 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Personally, for me, I would say 30. It just sort of depends on how consistent that those temperatures would be. If I had 4 days in a row at night where we're getting like 27 degrees, 24 degrees, then 23 the next night, then like 29 or something, that would be a situation in which I would worry about a bulb dying, an amaryllis bulb. But we don't ever have something like that where I live. That it never gets cold like that. We do get a few typically days in our winter that are in the 20s. Last year it was like 1 day, I think, out of the whole winter that was like, it got to 24, I think, degrees. This winter, however, we've had almost 10, something like that. It's been a very cold winter here for where I live, which is very unusual. But the reason I didn't plant them in the ground in the fall, though, was mainly because I had lost one 2 years ago. I think our squirrel or something ate one. And so ultimately I was just trying to kind of wait as long as I could before I put them in the ground. Where I live, you can kind of plant in the ground any time of the year. So that was the main reason I didn't plant them in the ground then. I just didn't want to take the chance of some evil raccoon or something digging it up. But anyway, it worked out because this has been a pretty cold winter, and I would have been kind of nervous about that. Even with the cold we've had, it still wouldn't be enough to kill these bulbs. So I got them in October, and I've had them stored in my garage in paper bags. And I just planted them the other day in terracotta containers. So these are the 10 bulbs that I have, and these are all labeled. Let's see, I have Marilyn, I have Lemon Star, I have Dancing Queen, I have Picasso, I have Double Dream, I have Naranja, Exotic Peacock, Blossom Peacock, Moon Scene, and Estella. Now, I just did this on February 1st, but what I'm planning on doing here, I would say mid-March, maybe before, we'll see, is just to take them out very carefully and plant them in my garden in front, right there in front of these trellises where I have my sweet pea growing. These are 3 different kinds of sweet pea I have growing right here, and I have to move these stones, and I still have a lot of mulching to do and getting up a lot of weeds, but I even think I'm gonna move these back a little bit. But I have my roses are gonna go here behind these trellises. I'm just doing 2 roses this year, I decided, and I'm doing my plumeria gets sunk in its container in the middle. But I wanted to have space between my line of amaryllis and those roses for other annuals when the time comes, whenever I take this sweet pea out. So yeah, I'm planning on having naturalizing though my amaryllis here like in a long line along with my dwarf bearded iris, which are around my center pond there. The 3 things that I've had that are kind of cold, not as cold hardy as everything else, are my sweet pea, my freesia, and my stock. But for the most part, they've turned out fine. They all look good. You know, you can see my stock right here, or right here. It all looks pretty good. There has been some frost damage. I'm still growing another whole batch of stock just in case. And the same thing for my sweet pea, which is, again, all that, and they look really, really good. Freesia is a different story. that actually it has been a bit too cold for my freesias, and a lot of that growth has above ground has died back. As an example, you can see just the frost damage on these. I wish they hadn't have come up, but they did. These were kind of accidentally left in ground anyway, so it's okay. I have a feeling they still will bloom in the spring. And the same thing for these are all of my freesia. I planted a lot of freesia over here in the fall, and you can see like most all of them have kind of died back. This does not mean that the bulbs or the corms have died, because I don't think they have. I have a feeling just in the spring they will continue to grow, but I guess I'll find out if this winter was a bit too cold for them. I have a container. This whole thing has freesia in it, and I don't know if you can see those little sprouts kind of got damaged. For the most part, those didn't come up though, so I'm still really hoping that this comes up in the spring and is beautiful. So anyway, yeah, in the spring, well, mid-March, maybe early March, I'm going to take those amaryllis out very carefully from their containers and just plant them here in the ground. And by that point, I would say that they would have started growing, exhibiting like active leaves. One of them has a tip of a bud even showing. They grow half as slow as they would indoors though, because of the cold weather out here. So you can't really consider the ways in which these tags or the selling point will claim like 6 to 8 weeks for blooms or something. If you're going to be planting them outdoors, you kind of have to, I would just overall, you estimate the general time frame of amaryllis blooming outdoors in spring is like mid-spring. But they can kind of bloom any time that it just is dependent on the weather. They need like a consistent temperatures above 50 degrees to create those buds and come up. So I have a feeling that even before this mid-March, even starting now, I'm gonna see that growth come up, and those buds come up, maybe some foliage, but it'll still be a lot slower than it would if it were indoors, because we still have really cold nights, or cold nights that are still in the 30s right now. This will not kill these bulbs. This won't harm them. However, if it does start getting a lot of growth on it between now and mid-March, like leaves or buds, and I'm getting temperatures that are too low, I would say down to low 30s, it depends on how cold it gets, I can just move them very easily into the garage. They're still in containers. So this is just an idea for you if you're someone in, sorry, it's right there, my amaryllis. If you're someone in a similar place than me, like on the line of where they can be, zones 8 to 10, this is kind of a way to get them and plan to put them in the ground rather than just planting them in the fall and hoping that it works out. You can do that, of course, just make sure that the neck is exposed. For amaryllis, my favorite soil media is like cocoa peat, sand, and just an organic compost mixed together. It's probably best to, I'm starting to figure out fertilizing all spring bulbs to fertilize them after they flower, I think. But if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm wanting to fertilize like all the time too. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful for you. If you are growing amaryllis outdoors, I'm definitely going to have a video of mine once they're blooming. Once everything out here is done, I still have a lot of work to do, and hopefully it'll be really beautiful, and you will see that it can be done, and growing amaryllis outdoors is absolutely possible. And you know where I'm at, and if you're in a similar zone, zone 8, 7B, 8A, you do not have to keep these forced bulbs indoors only, or you know, only have those blooms indoors. If you want them in a garden outdoors, you can absolutely have that. So anyway, thank you for watching, you guys.